movie that I think is going to get a lot of attention. Yeah, how the movie began and ended with Aretha Franklin singing gospel music. I'm curious, what was your thinking, and was that intentional on your part?
Yeah, so when I pitched the film to the studio, when I was still being interviewed, um, I just said very clearly that I thought that the movie should begin in the church and end in the church, because the church was so formative in terms of who she was as a person, her politics, but also her sound. And she Amazing Grace is one of her most successful albums. And so it seemed to me that that was a really beautiful bookend to begin and end with gospel music.
Was it, you said from the get go you wanted to end it in the church, but was it difficult to determine how to end this movie? Because you could have ended later, you could have ended at a lot of points in her life. So what was the
Absolutely.
thing ending
Well,
right there?
for me, I personally don't love a birth to death biopic, because I think then you have to kind of rush around and just kind of cram everything into it. I like a story where you really get to know an artist or a character, where you can kind of see all of the ways that they grew, learn about the people in their lives. And so I felt like um, spending time in her childhood and in her 20s, when she kind of came into herself, was the movie that I wanted to make. And I really do feel like that Amazing Grace album and her singing is such a triumphant
Yeah.
moment in her career, that it would just be an amazing way to take us out of the film, and also fire up our imaginations to think about the rest of her life.
Yeah, yes, and it was just it was. I loved how you guys put in there that the studio was pushing back on the idea, and then all of a sudden it's the top selling album of all time. Um, it's my understanding that Jennifer Hudson was picked by Miss Franklin for this role. Is that correct? Uh,
Absolutely.
did she have any advice, Miss Franklin, have any advice on what's in the film? I mean, how much input did she have?
No, she didn't. Her big contribution was choosing who should play her, and at the end of the day, she was 100% correct about who should play her. That to me is like the great gift that she gave me, is Jennifer.
I mean, I think we're looking at some awards there, or I think that there should be. She had a lot of tragedy in her life. Most of it not her fault. Depicted on screen, she had a lot of men in her life that were not good men. How did you, as a director, balance the tragedy with the triumph? What was your goal there?
Well, that's exactly right. I feel like sometimes you can get too bogged down in the dark periods of a person's life, but she had so many triumphant moments, and I think really getting to know where she struggled, you could appreciate her triumphs even more. And so for me, that's the balance of the journey. Because I also want people to be able to identify with her journey. Sometimes people think that superstars just have this life that, and if they were doing their life better, then they could also have a life like that. But that's not the case. Everybody has struggles. Everybody has baggage. Everybody has crisis of faith. Everybody has moments where they have to go inside of themselves and really ask themselves who they are and how they want to be in this life. And I think that if you don't show those moments, you shortchange the character.
Absolutely. You might have answered part of my question just then, but I was going to ask you, when the credits roll, what you're wanting people to be thinking about. What are you wanting people to be thinking about when they walk out of the theater?
Um, I want people to be uplifted. I think people have had a rough time in the last year and a half. And I want people to feel reconnected um, to each other and to their faith and to their, and to really think how do they want to live their lives, and Aretha is just a beautiful example of how you can overcome so much difficulty and still have a bright outlook.
One thing that I was struck by was the depiction of race in the movie. We're coming, we're coming to terms in America with our past, and I found it really interesting how she wanted those white singers in the room with her. She said they could sing, so they could play soul. I forgot what the phrasing was. So I'm just
those boys have soul.
Boys have soul. That's right. So what? I mean, I don't know if it's possible for this to even have an answer in a biopic, but I'm just curious. What is, from your perspective, what is the movie's message on race?
I think that I thought about the word soul a lot, in the making of this film, because she's the queen of soul. But what is soul? What does it mean? What does it mean to be the queen of soul? And I've heard her talk about it, and she kind of, one of the video interviews I saw, she said, soul is, she did this kind of cute, like, soul is that, it's like, and I think that what music does, and what music in this movie does, and her music does, is the great unifier, right? Because what you see in those Muscle Shoals scenes is, you got a bunch of white boys from the deep South. This was still a time when it would have been weird to sit in a restaurant with those white musicians and Aretha Franklin, and eat. But they could sit in that dumpy little studio and make magic and make music that transcended everything. And and to me, that was powerful for her, and so I thought it should be in the film.
Yeah, music played a huge role in the civil rights movement in terms of ending segregation, so I thought that was a really cool part that you put in there. You guys barely beat the pandemic for making this film. Tell me how close because I was on set like a month before all that stuff happened.
I know. Can you believe it? It's hard to believe that we were just like sitting on set, surrounded by hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and then
yeah.
So I know.
How close?
So we finished shooting in February, and then I had a week off, and then I started editing the film in New York City, and I think I had about a week, maybe 10 days in the edit bay with my crew, my post crew, before we got shut down. And then everybody had to go retreat to their individual apartments, and we edited the entire movie during COVID. I was alone in my apartment in Harlem. It's crazy.
Was there anything regretted, like you thought, man, I wish we could fix that, but you couldn't, or were you able to fix everything you wanted to?
I was very prepared for this film because it was the Aretha Franklin story. So there were no reshoots that I needed to do. I got it all. I got it all.
Liesl, I really appreciate you talking to me. I was so moved by this film. I mean, I took my 13-year-old son. He loved it. Okay. So there's cross-generational attraction.
I love that. I love to hear that.
Wonderful. Hey, thanks so much. God bless. Thanks for making the film.
Thank you so much, Michael. My pleasure. Good to talk.